Storing, scaling, and transforming images is a hard problem. So I was really happy to find out that Cloudinary has a Nuxt plugin, and it has some really interesting and neat features that you can use to optimize your images, to do transform scaling of it, and I wanted to show you how that works. So if you go to the cloudinary.nuxt.js.org website, you can see all the information about this module and how to get it installed inside Nuxt. What I really like about it is just a drop-in replacement, and then you can get all your images that are hosted on Cloudinary and then get them up in your Nuxt app. But it also does kind of interesting things, like you can add overlays, remove backgrounds, whole bunch of things. So in this video, I went ahead and created a quick app. So this app right here lists a bunch of different images that I have already uploaded to Cloudinary. I can actually click this button here and use one of the Nuxt.js Cloudinary Module widgets to do additional uploads if I like. I can click on any of the images and then customize those images. And I think this is really interesting. So let's say, for example, I needed to add some text to it. I can just change the text here. Hi there. And it gets updated on the image. I can change the opacity and background of it. I can change the font size to make it look bigger. I can even add blur effects. Let's say maybe I want to make it a little bit blurry. And also I can do some things like removing the background. So here I only have the background. I can make it grayscale if I wanted to. I can even pixelate it. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of all the things and features that Cloudinary offers. This is all built inside Nuxt with this new Cloudinary module. So let me walk you through step by step on how to get this up and running. Before we jump into that though, I put a link to Cloudinary below, so it's absolutely free to test out everything I'm doing today. I didn't have to put a credit card or anything in. Just click that link below and sign up for Cloudinary and try it out. So you can see from their website, they actually do videos, they do images, they do a bunch of optimization, transforming. It's a pretty great way to serve your images up on the web. So let's take a look at the code. All right, so I'm in my VS Code here, and let's begin by installing the Nuxt framework into a folder. So I'm gonna run npx nuxc at latest, and I'll do init, and then I'll make a name. Let's call it Cloudinary app. And then from here, it's going to ask us a few questions. I'm using npm, so I'll choose that. And that'll install the dependencies. So if we look at the Nuxt Cloudinary documentation, the getting started installation guide, it tells us that we need to install Nuxt.js Cloudinary and then add it in as a module. And so let's go and do that. It also recommends that you create a .env file and put the Cloudinary cloud name, and then you can start using the images. So let's see if we can get this all working. So I'm going to say yes for Git repository, and now I'll go ahead and change directories in the Cloudinary app. Okay, so VS Code is open now, and I have a brand new Nuxt app. Let's go ahead and install what it recommends. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. This will install the Cloudinary module, and then inside our Nuxt config, so we'll just copy and paste this modules here. Okay, that looks good. And then we'll need to create a .env file. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to use my advanced new file. We'll put it in the root folder, and we'll call it .env. And then from here, we'll need to add in a couple things. They recommend you call it Cloudinary cloud name. I'll just copy that. And then this will need to have a cloud name. To get that, we'll log into our Cloudinary management console. If we click on dashboard, you can see here we have a couple of items here. We have an API key, an API secret, and a cloud name. So I'm just going to copy the cloud name here, and I'm just going to paste it in. And what we're going to do as well is we are eventually in this tutorial, we're going to talk to the Cloudinary API, and we'll need to actually use the secret key and the API key to do that. We might as well go ahead and add those in there right now. I'm going to call this Nuxt Cloud Secret Key, and then I'm going to have a Nuxt Cloud API key. And so I'll go ahead and add those in as well. So I'll click the API key, and inside here, I'll just paste it in. And for the cloud secret key, I'll go ahead and do that off camera, but I'll add that in there as well. And I'll just need to click this little button here to display it. Okay, so I went ahead and updated that .env with both of those values. You can also see in this website, they do have a getting started guide. So if I wanted to click here, I do get some information about different environments and how to upload your first assets. So there's a lot of good information on this. Also at the top here, you can see this is information on Node.js, Cloudinary. Now, one thing it says if you're using Node that you need to run this npm install Cloudinary. Since we want to run some server-side things, we're going to create an API route under the server here later on, and we're going to do a request to our backend to retrieve all the different pictures that we have. We'll need to install this library as well. So I'm just going to copy and paste it to install the npm Cloudinary library. All right, let's test to see if we have everything working. First, I want to do a little bit of maintenance on my app. I don't really like this Nuxt welcome. I'm going to do the Nuxt page component, and then I'm going to add in some pages. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a new folder. It's going to be called pages, and I'm just going to have an index.view. And then inside here, I'm going to add in, let's do a script setup lang.js, and then we'll have a template, and let's just say hello world for now. So I'm going to run npm run dev, and this is going to start it in port 3000. Perfect. And then we'll open up port 3000. Great, and we see hello world here. Now let's see if we can get an image to display from Cloudinary. Now if we look at the getting started guide here, it mentions you can add this cloud image. You can add a source, a width, a height, and an alt, and it'll display for you, which is exactly what we want. But to know what images we have, a real easy way to do that is we go back to our Cloudinary Management Console. And by the way, we're on this tab, this programmable media. And then we can go down to our media library. We click this little link here, it'll open up in a new tab. And this will show all of the stuff we've uploaded, and also has some default images too as well. So I have a few here. Let's say we wanted to look at this penguin one. I have this name right here. I can change the name of this, but I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to copy it. And so now since I have this hello world, let's see if I can just try this image out. So we know we need, it's called a CldImage, and we need to add in a source, and we'll copy paste that source in. And we're not going to put any, let's add a width and height just so it's not ginormous. We'll put, I don't know, 400 pixels. And if we come back to our app here, great. So now we see it. So now we know we are grabbing images from Cloudinary. So that is our first step. Let's also add in an upload button. If we go back to the Nuxt Cloudinary website and click the hamburger button here, we can go into different components, and we can see we have this cloud image, cloud media library, OG image, product gallery. So let's look at the CldUploadWidget. I like this because you can use this to surround anything you like in your app, and it adds this upload widget to do it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this, and let's see what it happens. Right down here, I'm going to paste it, and it is looking for something called open, which will then be attached to this button right here. So every time you click it, it's going to use this slot here called open, and let's see what it looks like. So I save it here, come back up, click upload image, and now I have this complete upload image widget. And what I really like about it is you can upload images directly from your hard drive, or you can use ones from Shutterstock, Getty Image, iStock, Unsplash, and add it in there. And so this will become very useful to us. Now, one thing I noticed is that we have just kind of the normal out-of-the-box upload image, but I want to do some CSS and make it look a little nicer. So I really like Tailwind. So let's install the Tailwind Nuxt Module. So if you've never done that before, there's a few ways to do that. We could use something like Tailwind Prime View, but there is a Tailwind CSS Nuxt.js module. If you go to tailwindcss.nuxt.js.org, you can use it. If I click the Get Starting Guide, this will look familiar. Just do npm install Nuxt.js Tailwind. So let's do that real quick. I'm going to stop the server. I'm copying and pasting it. And okay, so it says it's installed. And if we follow this guide for Nuxt 3, I just need to add in this module here. I'm going to copy it. I'll go into my Nuxt config, and I'll just add it in. So there's the second one. And then one thing I always do is I make sure that after I do this, I run npx tailwind css init, and this will create the Tailwind config file. And what this does is I have an extension in here for Tailwind, and this will just make sure the extension works correctly. And also if I need to make any updates to Tailwind itself, now I have this file. So if I look at Tailwind config, I can add in my own themes and things like that. So let's see if this is working correctly. I'm gonna run npm run dev, and then I'll go back into my index view, and this button should look a little different now. It's gonna be the plain button after I refresh it. Yeah, see there's nothing on here. So I can do something like this. I'll do class, let's see, background yellow 400. Let's make it blue, and then I'll do rounded text white, and I'll do a padding 4. Okay, so now I have my upload image, something really basic there. So what I imagine on this page is that we'll have a 3x3 grid that'll have every single image kind of listed in thumbnails for each. And then we'll be able to click on any of the images and it'll go to an edit page where we can then do some edits to the photo. And I think that'll really show the capabilities of Cloudinary and everything that it can do. So inside my Nuxt app here, let's do that. Right now, all we have is a pages folder with the index.view. Let's go ahead and add a few other things. So I'm going to use my advanced new file inside the pages folder. And then we're going to create a new folder. I think we're going to call it edit. And then we'll have an index.view inside there. And then once again, we'll have a script setup ling equals ts. And then we'll have a template. We'll say hello from edit. We'll make sure that works in a moment. And then what we also want is if we look here, we have this whole section on server. And this is where we're going to have a API route. And we want our API route to connect to Cloudinary and list all the images, or maybe like a subset of them, maybe 10 or 20 images. So let's set that up. We can, once again, I'll use my advanced new file. We're going to put it in the server folder. And then this one, I'm going to create something called API and then cloud. And this file is going to be a server route that's going to display all our different files. Now, if to do this, I had to look this up. If you look at the search API, if you Google for the search API method, there's some really good docs on how to get this set up. You can use this cloudinary.v2.search, which is what I did. To use any of this, though, you have to run a config command, which is also listed in the docs. So let's do that. First, we're going to import in Cloudinary from Cloudinary. And then since we're using a Nuxt route, we'll have to use this thing called define, and it's going to be async, and it's going to have an event. And then inside here, this is where we're going to run on the server some things. So first, I'm going to create an interface. I guess I could have this outside the event handler, but I'll just leave it in here. And this is going to be what we're going to expect back from our v2 search. It's just going to have this resources, and this resources are going to be an object, and it's going to have a public ID, which is type string. That's the most important thing that we care about from this interface. Then we can do this search. So I'm going to do a cloudinary.v2.config. Well, first we'll have to do the config first. And then here we'll do cloud name. And since we're using environmental variables, we can do this a couple of different ways inside Nuxt. Very straightforward ways. We can do this const environmental equals useRuntimeConfig, pass in the event, and then we can have the name. So we know it's environmental dot, and this is going to be public. And if we go back to the Nuxt config, we actually need to set this up so it shows up correctly. Otherwise, they won't. This runtime config is a part of Nuxt, and it allows you to have values be available in your front end code and in your API routes. But you have to do a little bit more configuration in our Nuxt config to get this working. To do that, first we're going to add just the variable called Cloudinary, and then we'll put in the value for it. So cloud name, and we already have it in the env file, but I'll just type it in here again. And then we'll need to add in the runtime config. And these are going to be secret values that are only available for if you're running on the server. So we're going to call this one to be cloud, and we're going to do process dot, and then we called it Nuxt cloud secret key. And then the next one would be cloud key, and we'll call that process.env.nuxt cloud API key. So what this does is now we have a public key that we can use, but we also have the private keys for cloud secret and cloud key that we can use as well. Now let's go back into our API that we just created, this Cloud.js file. And now we should be able to finish this config here. So we have this public, it's going to be Cloudinary, and then you can see here it already has it listed here, cloud name. Perfect. And then we'll need API key, and that's going to be environmental, and you can see here the API key is here, it's a cloud key. And then the API secret, environmental, and it's called cloud secret. So awesome. So now we have the configuration for this route, and now we can actually go and do the search. So we're going to do basically the search here. And what this says is we can give it an expression, and this expression tells us what sort of things we want back. Kind of the most basic thing that we can return back. It kind of looks like SQL, by the way. You can add these ands and ors and statements to it to get exactly what you want. But the most basic one is just return all the images. We don't need to add any other criteria or filters. So how do we do that? So we're going to do const data. We're going to use that new results, which is the type that we have. And we're going to wait the cloudinary.v2, and this time we're going to use the search. And then we can just chain the items that we want. So we'll do expression, and that's going to be that resource type image. Then we're going to sort by, and we'll sort by the public ID. We'll make it descending. We'll have the max results. Since we're having a 3x4 actually square, so there'll be 12 images. So we'll have 12 here, and then we'll have an execute right here, and then we'll return the data. So we'll return .data, and this actually have a typo here, should be result. I guess I can call this results. I don't know, I think that sounds better with an S. Results. Okay, so I'm going to save it. Now let's make sure our server is still running. It is. And so let's see if we can grab the data back. Now I've already uploaded a bunch of images, so they should be there, but let's refresh this page here. Oh, it says that we have a problem with this here. I had a typo in my edit page, so let's fix that. We'll go to index here. This should be script setup lang ts. Let's see if that works. Okay, so if we go to /edit, have hello from edit, which is fine. Now if I use our new API, which is API/cloud, awesome. So you can see it has connected to the backend using our keys, and it's returning a bunch of data. Now we typed it. If we go back into our cloud, all we did is we gave it the type for just public ID. So we have this resources, and all we care is the public ID. Obviously we have a lot more information if we need it, but for now we'll just grab the public ID out of it. So I think the next thing to do is to see if we can create our grid and show all the images. Okay, so for that grid, right now all I have is this very straightforward picture. Let's do a little bit of CSS work. So first I want to go in the app.view. I'm going to create a new style component, and I'm just going to add a padding of 4 rem. Let's see what that looks like. That is way too much. Let's do 4 pixels. Okay, just a little bit of padding around it. That's a little better. Now in my index.view, I think I'm just going to comment this out for right now. Then inside my script setup, I want to connect to our API route that we just created, and then display those images using the CldImage component. So one handy dandy feature that Nuxt has is something called useFetch. So I'm going to grab the data and refresh, and we use fetch, and then I'll just pass in the endpoint, and that's the API cloud. And then inside here, we can go ahead and create our grid. I'm going to create a div here, and I'll add some classes in. We're going to make padding 4, we're going to have a grid, and we'll do grid columns 3, grid rows 3. We'll have a gap of 3 between each one. We'll do a width 3/5. We'll center it. We'll put a little bit of a border around it, and we'll make the border green, 300, and then we'll have some margin on the top as well. And then for the pictures themselves, this is where we're going to use the v4 directive, and this will grab the data that we want. So we'll do picture in data.resources, and now we'll need to add a class here. So we eventually want each one of these images to go to the edit page. So we'll have a cursor of type pointer, and then we can add in the CldImage. I really like how you never have to import anything in. If it ever does this, you can delete it. You don't actually need it in there. So for this CldImage, really, we just want a few things. I'm going to say the width is going to be 600, the height is going to be 600, and then for the source, this will be the picture ID, and we'll save it. Awesome. So you can see right here, we have all the pictures. We have the gap. You can see the cursors coming over, and we can grab all of them. Let's also add in an upload button. Let's do that. So I don't think I need this anymore, but there's this upload widget. Maybe I can copy and paste this out before I delete everything. And so this CldUploadWidget will allow us to upload something on the page. And I'll also add in an H1, and we'll say this is select photo to edit. And in this H1, I also want to add a few classes. We'll do really large text, and we'll do font extra bold, so it's a little bit more bold. Now, one thing we want to do on this CldUploadWidget is we want to, as soon as it's done uploading, we want it to refresh what we're doing. So there is, if we look at the documentations for the CldUploadWidget, there is a few extra props that you have. You have the signature endpoint, you have event props, so on air, on upload. So we want to see it, make sure that when it's done uploading, that we do something, and that way we can refresh that list of photos here with the new one. So let's see if we can add that in here. So right here, I'm going to add in on upload, and we're going to create a new function called on upload in a second. And then also on close, we're going to do this also one called refresh pics, and this will make sure we refresh everything for us. And then for this class here, I don't know, for the button, we'll just leave it like this and see, we'll make it width. So now we have this big upload to image here. We'll fix that in a moment to make it more centered. But for now, let's see here. We have a few new functions that we need to add. So if we come back here, first let's add that new on. So I'm going to create the on upload here, and it's going to be result of ref type result, and we'll add this new result. So I'm going to create this interface. It's going to be type info here, and this will be public ID string. This is kind of similar to the one that we created earlier, but I'll just add it in here too. We could probably refactor this and share it, but this is fine for now. And then I want to create a new way to keep that image. So I'm going to create a new image info ref. It's going to be type result or null, and then we'll default it to null. Some people like to do this as result. I don't like doing that. I feel like this just makes more sense because you can use generics. And now this image info, we can say on upload image info dot value equals result dot value. Also, I'm going to add this new refresh pics here, function pics, and then we'll just call refresh directly from there. All right, so this looks good. I have my on upload, and I have this image info. Now I can do a couple of things here. With this image info, I could just have a cloud. As soon as I'm done uploading it, I can just display it above it. Let's just see what that looks like. So I have the cloud widget right here. What happens if I just do CldImage, and I'll put the source, and that'll equal this new image info. And I'll put a width of 500, height of 500. And it's also telling me that I probably should add an alt text, something I missed in this one too. We could probably grab that out of the picture, but I didn't save it in there. But for now, I'll just put in test. Normally, you would probably want to put like the correct alt for each one of these, but for right now, I'll just put in test. Oops, I had a bug here. Let me put a colon here. And so this will be the image info, which will be grabbed from here. And this will be image info.public ID. So now I have the source image info here. So here it is. It also appears like it's not there at the beginning. Well, maybe we'll do a V. There actually is an image info public ID. Now, one of the last things we need to do to actually make an upload work is we have this upload preset, and it's set to Nuxt Cloudinary Unsigned. So we have to add an upload to allow us to do uploads. And to do that, we can go back into the console. We'll click this little icon at the bottom left-hand corner to do settings. And then we'll click on upload. And then from here, you can see the unside uploading enabled. So we can go in here and add a preset and then allow basically anyone to make uploads. So let's do that. I'm going to click add upload preset. It already comes up with the default name. I'll just leave it like that. Now for the signing mode, I'm going to leave it unsigned. And that way users, public users, can actually upload. I'm going to click save here. And now I have this new name here. I'm going to copy it here. And I'll go back into this upload preset. I'll paste it. I'll save it. And then we'll go back into our app, refresh it, and let's see if we can get this image to show. So we have this cloud image that will show when we upload, and it'll also refresh this list down here. So I'm going to click upload image. Well, let's go ahead and try Unsplash. We'll connect to it. Let's try this one, a train traveling through a tunnel. I'll click next. I'll choose the size. Click upload. Cool. Looks like it's done. I didn't get any errors. I'll click done here, and great. Now our image is showing. And depending on how this refreshes, it may not show on this list, but we can definitely see that it's listed here, which is really good. So if we refresh the page, it'll disappear, but that's fine. Awesome. So now we've been able to do uploads. I'm going to go ahead and just remove this cloud image for now, but we can definitely see that we have that image there. And I'm also going to do a little cleanup. I'm going to delete this. And the next thing we need to do is see if we can get the edit to work. Let's see if we can get each one of these to go to the edit page and see how that works. So we have this right down here, this v4. Let's go ahead and just add an @click handler to it for anytime anyone clicks in here, I want it to go to that page. And so I'm going to create a new function called goToEdit. We'll pass in the picture.public ID. And so let's create that new goToEdit. So in here, this will be function goToEdit. It's going to take a public ID, which is type string. And then I'm just going to do a router push. And then this router.push, we'll send it to the edit. And then we'll send the photo here. And we'll just send it as a query param over. I think that would be the most straightforward. So we'll definitely have to encode URI the component and then pass in the string so that way it looks correct when it gets sent over. And then I put router key. This should be router. And then we'll need to actually get the router. So we'll use const router equals use router. Great. All right, let's do a couple of updates to our app, a little house cleaning here. First, on this page right here, we have all these images, but if we look at the inspect, kind of look at these images. Now, nice thing about Cloudinary that it automatically sets different heights and widths in different images based on the view size. So if 640 width, it'll display this image. But one thing I noticed is that these images we set to a pretty large size, 600 by 600 in this grid. And one thing we want to do is reduce the size. So I'm just going to first make these 300, which makes it a little bit smaller, but they're actually going to be a smaller size. And we can take a look at that if we go into the network tab. We'll just kind of refresh the page. We can take a look at all the images that are downloaded. You can see right away they're making them WebP. So nice thing about Cloudinary, it automatically detects what screen size you're using and it adjusts the images. It also uses the fastest file format that you should use. So in this case, it uses WebP, and you see these sizes are really small, 14K. So that's going to make our website load even quicker. Another thing that kind of bothered me a little bit is we're hard coding in this alt test, but you can add in different alt tags to your images. So the way you would do that inside Cloudinary, if we go back to the console, we can go to the media library, and this will show all the files that we've uploaded or added in, including the default test files. And if we look at this page here, if we click on one of these, we have a few options available. We can click here and go to advanced editing or edit, but we can click open here. And then we have something called metadata. And here's the contextual metadata. So we can add in alt text. So in this case, we can say pink bird, and then we can save it. Now we can do this for all the images that we like. There's also more ways Cloudinary handles this. You can actually use AI to help you generate your alt text. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to assume that we're going to add in all the alt text that we want for all the images that we've uploaded. After you've added in the alt text, if we go back to our app, and if we go to our API route that we created, and we go to /cloud, what we'll notice here is we actually don't have that alt text anywhere. If we just search for alt, we don't see it. It's not listed. What we need to do is make sure that when we do our search that it retrieves that data. And that's pretty straightforward. Let's go back into our cloud.ts file. And we can see here we do this Cloudinary v2.search. If I just put dot here, I can see all the different things it has. One of them, it has something called width field. So let's add that in. So width field. And I had to look this up, but there's something called context. Kind of gives it away, I suppose, if we go back in here and we go back and open up one of these. The metadata description here is called contextual, so that might give us a little bit of hint. But let's add in this context as our width field. So that'll add another field. So if I refresh this, and now we search for alt, you can see now some of the images have this context alt in here, which is perfect. Not all of them, but so this one says woman. Here's sample preview images that may have already been in our account. Two ladies, man smiling. So now we have all these alt tags in here. So now we can add it in. So inside here, inside our cloud.ts, first I want to change this. It actually looks like this. It has a context, has object, and it's type string. And I did mention we'd probably want to maybe move this into its own utility file because I am duplicating that same interface over here. Maybe I'll do that in a future refactor, but for now, let's just see if we can add this in. Context, alt, and that's type string. And that's coming from this type result right here on this on upload. So now we have this image info that has this in here, and we should be able to change this text here. So instead of doing this alt here, we're going to do the picture context dot alt. Now we know that sometimes that this text does not exist. So we want to be careful here. So what we want to do is, if it isn't there, we'll just default to test, whatever it was before. So if we save that, and we come back to our app here, and we go back here, now we should have alt text on all the different images after it loads. Just to make sure, I'm just going to kind of show it up here. I'm going to copy this over and just display it right here with our double curly brackets since we're in view, and see what it looks like. Cool. So you can see these don't have any alt text, but this one does. These say sample preview images. So at least we have some better alt text, which I think makes it just a little bit nicer and a little bit more accessible, which is great. And we also have much smaller images. This app should load pretty quickly. Now the second part, what we want to do is we have all these images and we want to be able to click on it and then do some edits. So that's kind of really the power of Cloudinary. Rather than just being able to display images, store them, have them responsive, being able to use WebP and have it automatically detect your browser to make the images smaller, you can also do a lot of neat things. First, I want to go into this Cloudinary management console. And if I go into the settings again, like I did earlier, where I was adding in the different upload, you remember I went here to upload and added upload preset. There is actually add-ons. And one add-on that I like to try out is the Cloudinary AI Background removal. So to do that, you just want to click on it. It adds it. Now, you do have a certain amount of free images that you can use, a free amount of background removals, and then you have to pay. So just keep that in mind. So I went ahead and turned that on. Let's just try to start off with trying to display the image here. So we're gonna write some CSS and see if we can get this up and running. So rather than saying hello from edit, we're going to delete it. First, we actually can grab the data for the image. So one thing you notice is when you click on here, one of these images, on the top of the screen, I'm sending it as a query param. There's something called photo and the name of the image. So we should be able to just grab the image using that query param. And if you don't know, there is something called route. We can do route equals useRoute, and now we can use this route. So to grab the data that we want, I'm going to set it into a ref, and then inside this ref, we're going to call it, and this should be up here. And then inside this ref, we can grab the data from route.query.photo, and then we'll make it as a type string. So if I just put in photo here, okay, so I see it's actually grabbing, which is good, but we'd like to actually kind of display it and then make some edits to it. So we're going to use a little bit of here. We're going to do flex column. We're going to center all the items. We're going to put a gap 4. We're going to do width 3/4, and we'll make it auto. And so that just centers it. And I like flex, so we're going to use that. So we'll do an H1 tag here. We'll do font, extra bold, text 4XL, and we'll call it select customization. All right, so we're getting there. And then we want to have a 2 grid layout. So on the left-hand side, we'll have our customizations, and the right-hand side will show the picture. So to do that, I'm going to do grid layout, grid columns 2, and a gap of 4. And so we're going to have 2 sections. This is going to be section 1, and then we're going to have section 2. We come over here, see there's our grid 1 and our grid 2. So for grid 1, let's just add in an H2 to start with that section. So we'll have an H2 class text 3XL, and we'll call it enter text to add to image. And so what this will do is we'll have one H2 tag, and we're going to allow people to enter text into the image and then make updates to it. And this probably should be surrounded by a border, I suppose. So this div section, we'll do class border, and then we'll make it blue. We'll put some padding around it, flex column, gap 4, see here. And we'll make it rounded. Okay, enter text to add to image. Okay, doesn't look too great right now, but you know, we got something. And then we'll have an input, and we'll add some class stuff here. We'll do background gray 200, and we'll have it rounded as well. And we'll place a placeholder, which will be enter text. And this should be actually right here. There we go. And then obviously we'll need some more edits here, but let's see if we can grab the image and display it. So I'm going to do flex. We'll do class here, and we'll make it flex, and then W full. And then we'll have another section, and we'll just do a quick check to make sure that someone actually passed in the photo. So we'll do route.query.photo. If you're using view, $route is the same thing as the route that we saw earlier. And then we'll add some classes here. We'll just make sure it's centered and looks okay. And now we can finally pass in the CldImage. So we'll do CldImage here. We need to add in a few things. Let's do alt test, and we'll do source. Now the source we were supposed to get from the route. So if we come back up here, we have this photo, and so we should be able to just put in this photo here. Great. So cool. Looks like looks okay. We obviously need a width and height here, so we'll just do width 500, height 100. Okay, so now we have it in here. Let's add a button so we can get back to the previous page. So down here, probably right here, I'm gonna go with button, and we're gonna just call it back. And once again, we'll add some Tailwind classes. We'll make it green. The text will be white. We'll round it. P-2 width 3/5. And when you hover, I don't know, we'll just add in some fun hover effects. So maybe it turns dark when you hover it. See what it looks like. All right, so now you see here, it turns a little black when we hover it. Doesn't do anything. So we can add in a click handler. And then we'll use .router.push. And this we just put in the path. So in this case, it'll be the root. So let's see if it works. Hit back. Great. We got our images. Click one of our images. We're back. We see it. Seems to be working. All right. So we have a very simple way to look at the images, but let's see how we can make some edits to these images. If we go back to the documentation and we go back to our CldImage, we could see some usage examples, which is exactly what we want. So in our usage example here, we see the most basic way is we add the source, width, height, and alt, and we've been doing that. However, you can do all sorts of fun things like add in text and a whole bunch of different prompts. So we have this crop, which this is a way we can kind of adjust the crop of it. So let's say, for example, on the main home page. So if we go back here, if we want to crop it as a thumbnail, so we can add crop here and then equal thumb. If you do that, you can see it enlarges it and it looks more like a thumbnail, and it actually reduces the size of it as well. So this might be something we want to do too. I don't know, I'll leave it like that. There's also all sorts of things like removing the background. That's that AI option that we may want to do. You can add tint, you can add text, and then inside the text you can put exactly where you want it. So in like this case, they're putting music at the top and is live at the bottom. And there's a whole bunch of other things we can do. Let's imagine if we go back to our edit page, we're going to have a lot of different values we pass to this cloud image here. So we only have width, height, alt, and source now, but we might have things like opacity and remove background and a whole bunch of other things. So rather than having this huge cloud image, and I want this to be dynamic, I want people to be able to change the values in it, I think a good way to start would be to create a reactive variable, and then we can change and edit things, and we can then add that directly onto the element. I don't know if you've ever done this in Vue, but it's pretty handy. I'll show you how this works. So I'm going to create something called attributes. It's going to be a reactive variable. By the way, I love Next. I never have to import any of these things in. They just work. And then we're going to have something called effect. And then here is where we're going to have our values. So we can have, let's say, an alt. And right now I'm just going to set it to test. But if we want to, let's see, here's our photo. It's just a string. But if we want to, we could pass in the alt text. I'm just going to leave it alt test right now. I'm going to put 500 for the width. These are strings. And then height, 500. And then source, I can just pass in the photo here. And I can do something with the overlays. But let's see, let's just do a little quick refactor here and see if we can get these attributes added to this cloud image. So I'm going to come back down here. Instead of having all these attributes right here, I'm just going to use this handy dandy kind of shortcut where you do vbind here, and then I'll pass in attributes dot effect. Probably should be a dot effects, but that's fine. Factor it real quickly to use attribute dot effect. I come back to my console. I'll just make sure it's refreshed. Let's imagine I go into one of these. Great, still working as I expected. It didn't break anything, but now I don't have to continuously go into the template and add in all the effects. I can do it directly from here. And Vue is smart enough to basically add these as attributes, all these alt, width, height, and source. So the first thing I probably want to do is I added this text box right here, and we want this text to display on this image. So if we're going to cheat, they have this whole section here where you put the position and then you add in the text. And so we can use that as our guiding principle. So you have to add something called overlays, and then overlays has a big object. So let's do that. So we're going to add in overlays, and then overlays is an object, and then inside that, or excuse me, it's an array, and inside that array is an object. And then we have a bunch of things. So we can see position. Let's add that in. And then we want to add some text in. So we'll have this text, and we can add in a whole bunch of things. The color, font size, family. Let's do color, and let's make it orange. I can do font family. I'm just going to do the source sans pro, essentially what it has right there. And I'll do font size. Well, we'll do font size in a second. Well, let's just hard code it in. We'll do font size 20. Let's see what that looks like. And then you can put the text in. Right now, if we look at this input, we're not capturing this text anywhere. Probably a good thing to do is add in a vModel to this. So I'm just going to call it text. Now we don't have a vModel, a text here, so I'm going to add a ref, and it's going to be empty here. So what I want to do here is I want to add text, or we'll just have a blank space. And let's default the text to hello world. All right, so let's see if this worked. If I come back to my edit photo here, I see hello world here. I don't see it on the image. So let's see what we did wrong. Oops, so actually our font size needs to be a number, not text. So if we save this and we look again, we don't see it, but it's probably pretty small. So let's change this. I'm going to add the Y to 5, and I'm going to make this 60. Let's see here. And I'll refresh it. Okay, so I did some adjustments, and now you can see the hello world at the bottom. It's a little hard to see in this image. I don't know, let's make it blue. Okay, so now we can see it here. And so let's see if we update this text. Hi there. All right, awesome. So you can see it's updating the text, and it'd be really nice to kind of adjust this slider. Maybe we could add a slider to make this bigger or smaller. Let's see what it looks like in other images. So I'll come back here to my previous page. Let's look at this one. All right, so it looks okay. It just depends on the image and the dimensions of it, of where this hello world's going to show up. But I think I'm fine with this. So I think the next thing we want to do is see if we can add a way to change the opacity of this, maybe add some blur effects, and see if we can also maybe add in some font size so we can change the font size of this. What I want to do then is we can use sliders and use range sliders. I think that's the easiest thing. And we're going to create a new component to do that so we can kind of take the logic and have it be separate from everything else. I'm going to come back here and let's do advanced new file. And then we're going to create a new components folder. And the first one we'll call is image slider.view. And I can probably reuse this in a bunch of different places. By the way, I have this plugin set up so I can quickly create my view file. So here it is. I have an empty template, and what I want to do is I'm going to have a slider, and I want to pass in this slider from our parent component to this child component. And I'm going to use this new view 3.4 feature, which is called define model. If you haven't heard of it, it's a really nice way to do two-way data binding between a parent and child component. And it's much more straightforward than it is in the past where you had to do all these emits and everything. We're going to create a slider and then pass it in from the parent. And then we're just going to add in some CSS here. So we're going to have a section. We're going to have a border 2, some padding on it, flex column, item center full, and then we're going to be good citizens and create a label so everything makes sense. We're going to have it call it default range, and we'll have some class here, block, and we'll make it small. And then we'll have this slot, and so we'll pass in the value we want this label to say, and then we'll add an input. Okay, and then this input, we're going to have an ID. We'll have to, since we're using this label here, we'll need to have the same name. So we'll have default range, and we'll have type equals range. We'll add some classes in, and then we'll have this v model here. And we want to actually have it send over a number. So we'll do dot number, and that's a little trick inside view. And then we'll use this slider that's passed in. And then we'll show the value here. And that should be it for our slider. Let's take a look at it and see if we can get it added. We're going to go back into our edit page, and we're going to create a new one. Let's start with opacity. If we go opacity slider here, or ref out of 100, and then we'll come down here, and we already have one section for this text, but we'll need to add another one for our slider. So let's just add it in. It's obviously not going to work until we add some RV model. So we'll do v model here. We'll pass in that opacity slider, and we'll add in some text, some classes here to make it a little nicer. We'll do border purple 300. Okay, great. So I have the slider here. It doesn't do anything. Let's also make sure that we add some text in. We'll call this opacity. All right, so we have opacity. I don't think I like how close these are right here. Let's see here. We have this section. We want to add some classes to this. So we'll do flex column. Great. So now we have a little bit of gap. Now to get this connected, you can imagine we can just add it to here. So we'll add in, I think it's just opacity. We can always double check too. I can do a quick search, opacity. Now, opacity isn't actually listed in here, but if you look at the official documentation, there's a bunch of things you can use, and opacity should work. So let's see if it works here. So I'm just going to add an opacity and opacity slider. I'll save it. And now if we start messing around with this, you can see here now it's changing the opacity, making it very light. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want. Let's add a few more. I know we can use blur, and I think let's try blur next. So let's create our other refs that we want. We want a opacity slider. Let's create a font slider, which will start with, I don't know, maybe that 100 that we had. And then we'll have a blur slider, and we'll put that at 0. And so we should be able to pass all three of these in the same exact way we did earlier. So I have my image slider right here. I'm gonna just copy and paste it 2 times. One, this is going to be font size, and this is going to be blur, and this is going to be, this would be the font slider, this would be the blur slider, and then we'll just make this, I don't know, green, orange, okay. And then back at the top, we just need to add it into this array here. So we'll add in, I think it's just called blur, and that will be blur slider, and then the font, I think it's just called font. Let's see here, let me double check. Well, this font one should be down here. So it's font size, and we'll just add in the font slider. There we go. I think that's it. Let's see if this works. So now we have font size here. It's already starting at 100, so it's pretty big. Let's change that back to 40. Okay, so you can see it here. Let's see this blur. Okay, so it is blurring, but you can see even at 100, it's not that blurred. I think what I'm going to do is add a computed property. So this is a really nice thing. So anytime the blur slider updates, this property will update. I'll call it blur computed. We'll call it blur slider computed, and this will be a computed property. And this will just take the blur slider times, I don't know, 15. And this will be blur slider value. And then I can use blur slider computed right here. So it's a little bit of bigger value. So if I come back here, yeah, now it's much more blurred as I move up. I could probably even do less blurred. But great, so now I have 3 different ways to change it. I can change the opacity, the font size, blur. I could change this text. I think one other thing that we want to try is some of the nicer features, some of the neater features, the remove background, which I think it'd be kind of neat to see if we can use that. That's the AI feature that they have. We can also do grayscale, which would be a nice option. Also, we can pixelate. And rather than with all 3 of those, I think kind of the best bet is just have buttons instead of having sliders, because you can just turn those on or off. It doesn't really make sense to there's no like scale in those. So we're going to create a new kind of button. So I'm going to advance new file in the components folder. We're going to call something called .view, and I'll do my TS setup here. I always like moving this up to the top, just personal preference. And then in the attribute view file, we're going to create a button, and it's going to take those attributes and update them. Once again, we're going to use the handy dandy define models because we want 2A data binding in this. And this is going to have something called an effect, which is an array. And I think that's it. And then we also want to define, we're going to pass in like the type of effect in here. So those are those 2. And this should be pretty easy. We're just going to have a button. And this button, you can pass in the name of it. And then we're going to have some HTML elements on here. First, if someone doesn't pass in the attributes at all, it doesn't have any effects on it, we want to only have this button show if the effects are there. Otherwise, things are not going to work right. We're going to have a class, and we'll do text white rounded p2, and then we'll pass in the color from the parent, so that'll work. And then we'll have a click handler, and this click handler, I'm going to add the attributes. I'm going to grab the effect, and then I'm going to spread the values that are already in there, and then I'm going to add the new effect in and set it to true. And this should add in the effect that we want to add in. Let's go back to our edit page, and yeah, let's give it a shot. So we have a couple of different values that we want to send in. So we'll probably right under the image slider, right under this image slider section, well, let's create a new section for these buttons. And then these buttons, we're going to have flex. We'll add some classes to here, and we'll add in our new attribute button. First one, let's try the remove background. And they actually have an example in here, the remove background. It's just called remove background. Or if you use kebab case, it would have a dash there. So we have to pass a few things into this attribute button. First, we'll make the background blue 500, so we'll have a blue button. We'll pass in those attributes that we created earlier. And then the effect for this one will be remove background. So let's see if it works. Come back up here and it's giving us an error. I have a comma. Let me fix that. Go back into my attribute button. Oops, had one too many curly brackets. Okay, so now I have this remove background button. If I click on it, great. It removed the background. That's really cool. Let's add in a few other buttons to do a few other things. So we'll go back into our edit. And nice thing now is we have this handy dandy reusable component. I can just copy and paste it. Let's add it 2 more times. So the second one we're going to use, I'll just change this to grayscale. And this one, this effect name is called grayscale. And you can always look these up in the documentation, by the way. And I think I'm going to have this one be green. Let's do green. Yeah, let's do green. And this last one we'll call pixelate. And this one, it's called pixelate. There's a whole bunch of these too. All right, so now we have 3 buttons. So let's try grayscale. Hey, it looks gray. It doesn't actually change the text of we put on top of the image, which is fine, but we could always change that if we want. We could do pixelate. Yeah, now it makes it very pixelated. I don't think it's gonna work. Oh yeah, it still removes the background, which is awesome. Okay, great. So now we have a way to add text to our image. We can change the opacity. We can change the font size, make it bigger, smaller, blur. We can add all these effects. You can see how powerful Cloudinary is in all these respects. It's pretty awesome. I'm going to leave a link in the description. If you guys want to try Cloudinary for free, click on the link, upload your images there. It's well worth your time. I really appreciate Cloudinary for sponsoring this video. If you guys have any questions, leave a comment below. I'll also make sure that there will be a link to the source code. Really appreciate it. Thanks.